evening and welcome to the Norwood School Committee meeting of Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. This evening I have with me David Hiltz and Kate Sibing-Dunn. Dr. Joan Giblin will not be able to make it, and our chair, Anne-Marie Mazzola, will be here shortly. She is just traveling back from an out-of-state work trip, so she will preside as chair when she arrives. If I could please ask everybody who's here in attendance to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So first order of business is we have approval of minutes from our November 13th open session. Are there any questions or is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from November 13th open session.
Thank you, David.
Second.
Seconded by Kate. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That does pass 3-0. Mr. Leff, do we have any correspondence this evening?
We do not.
All right. So I will read the warrant report that was signed by Anne-Marie Mazzola, which is in our packet. So she signed warrants for payroll, two of them in the amounts, the first one of $2,066,661.08. The second one for $2,036,780.22. Anne-Marie also signed warrants for school nutrition in the amount of $2,646. Accounts payable for $82,582.31. Accounts payable for $30,677.32. Accounts payable for $66,217.43. School nutrition, $4,119.92. Accounts payable, $23,813.14. Accounts payable, $64,563.20. School nutrition, $140,915.64. Accounts payable, $15,459.43. Accounts payable, $136,084.67. For a grand total of $4,670,474.82. Are there any questions on the warrants that you would like to direct to Mr. Mannion or Mr. Leff? Okay, seeing none, we will move right along. At this time, we have public comment. As a reminder to the community, there are two ways that you can access public comment. You can show up at a school committee meeting and register upon arrival to speak to us, or you can call the superintendent's office at 781-762-6804 by noon the day of our meeting and pre-register to either speak to us in person or remotely. And if you do register remotely, you will receive a link from the superintendent's office. Is there anybody here who has come to speak to us at public comment? Mr. Leff, did anybody pre-register with you?
They did not, Madam Chair.
Okay, so at 7:05, I will declare public comment closed, and we will move into our appearances. This evening, we have Dr. Galligan and Ms. Durain from the high school to give us a report on advanced placement. Thank you for joining us this evening.
All right, good evening. Thanks so much to the committee for having us tonight. Our goal is to give a brief snapshot and overview of advanced placement coursework enrollment and performance at Norwood High School. To do that, we'll take a look back over the last 5 years in particular at some of the goals that we've been building into our school improvement plan. We'll look at the steps that we've taken to work towards each of those goals and the steps that we're taking on an ongoing basis. And lastly, some positive outcomes to celebrate and also some budgetary implications. So again, thank you so much for having us. If you take a peek at this slide, we look at 5 overarching goals, and these goals have really, I would say, really kicked in place since about 2019 up until now. Really having, since the time that Mrs. Durain and I have had the pleasure to be part of the leadership team at Norwood High School, I'm really looking at these 5 things as opportunities for our students. So the first is to expand the number of AP courses offered to improve student voice, choice, and access and opportunity for all students. So that has long been a goal of ours. across the board. When we had the schedule shift several years ago at the high school, student voice, choice, access, and opportunity were kind of the pillars of that, and that extends out to AP coursework. Second, we want to make sure we're eliminating any barriers that existed to access higher level coursework, including advanced placement courses. So that means, especially for students from traditionally marginalized populations, that we take a hard look at those and have honest conversations with ourselves and eliminate those barriers that might exist. Third, increase student participation in AP courses and exams. So just raw numbers, more students taking courses and exams in advanced placement. And then increase achievement in AP courses and exams. And those are two distinct things that overlap in many areas, but they each are a separate goal. And then lastly, to provide support for educators and students to be successful in AP coursework. So we're going to take our presentation kind of one goal at a time, touch a little bit upon steps that we've made towards them over the years.
So our first goal was expanding our AP course offerings, and you can see from what's listed on the slide that we've been able to add 11 courses to what we offer. And a really exciting opportunity for us was to expand those options to grades 9 and 10. Prior to 2019, AP coursework began in grade 11. The addition of AP Seminar and AP Research has been huge. Those two classes, if a student achieves a 3 or higher, in both of those they can earn an AP Seminar and AP Research certificate. And over their 4 years, with a 3 or higher in both of those courses and an additional 3 or higher in 4 other AP exams, they earn the AP Capstone Diploma. So our students are very excited about that, and we're starting to see a lot of growth there. These are the total number of AP courses that we're currently offering at the high school. There are 26, and they span all departments, fine arts, as well as all 5 of the core areas: ELA, math, science, engineering, world language, math, the whole gamut there. There's something for everyone.
Goal number 2 talks about eliminating barriers to upper level coursework. So advanced placement is a program run through the College Board where students can take a course that is standardized in a sense, and that it is approved by the College Board nationally. It is up to a certain level of rigor that is meant to mimic and mirror what a student would experience at the college level. And then that student then takes a national standardized assessment at the end of the year where you can norm yourselves and your performance as a school or as an individual as compared to students across the country world. In phase 1, we eliminated financial barriers of the AP exam fees for all students. AP exams are expensive, and prior to fiscal year 22, students in Norwood paid their own way. As such, the exam was optional at that point in time. As part of the FY22 budget, Norwood High School proposed to cover to partially cover the 2-year process, first to partially cover, and then to fully cover exam fees to eliminate that barrier. This is something, and then in phase 2, related to that, conduct district equity audit to identify strengths and areas of need regarding advanced placement. So 1 and 2 are completed. Those things happened. We did a district equity audit in the spring of 22, if I recall. And in that, praised for eliminating the barriers, the financial barriers that existed or previously existed and exist in many places. And also identified areas of need where we wanted to make sure that our advanced placement courses are demographically aligned to our total school enrollment, meaning that if you looked at the total demographics in terms of racial, linguistic, and economic diversity, that as well as special education status, EL status, all of that is mirrored or should be ideally mirrored in your advanced placement courses. There is often a gap there, and a gap was recognized in the equity audit, and that's a gap we've been working to close since that time. In phase 3, 4, and 5, all of which are ongoing, this is the work we're doing currently. Examining course recommendations and course selection practices, so when you dig deeper, you find out how students select or are recommended for advanced placement courses, and how courses that a student takes prior to the year in which they would take an advanced placement course affects their ability to even access that. In phase 4, examine course enrollment and demographic trends. This is what I just mentioned. You want to see the makeup of those courses and closely analyze it and know that you're making progress there to make sure that you are aligned. And in phase 5, ongoing, adjust practice to allow for expanded access and opportunity for all, especially students from traditionally marginalized backgrounds. So 3, 4, and 5 go together, and they are ongoing, and it is a cycle, an inquiry cycle that will constantly be going through, because students change every year, courses change every year, course selection changes every year. So we're consistently analyzing that. Before we get into goal, well, you can take a peek at goal 3, and I'll give you just a kind of heads up in terms of why this is so important, and Mrs. Durain's going to go through some of the statistics. You'll notice in the next couple slides a significant shift in between 2021 and 2022. So that is I would say, like a paradigm shift in Norwood High School in terms of AP access. That is the year that AP exams began to be required. That is the year that AP exams began to be fully funded. And as such, you see a significant increase and then steady increases after that. So Mrs. Durain will talk a little bit about these statistics and what they mean, but it's important to recognize that there's a significant shift that happens from 2021 to 2022, so that your 22, 23, and 24 statistics are apples to apples. Your 24 to 2020 statistics are apples to oranges.
So goal 3 was to increase our student participation in AP courses and exams. You can see from the data provided to us by the College Board that it spans the 5-year period. This is how we're measured. The top line reflects the number of students who take AP exams. The bottom line is the total number of exams that are taken. And you'll see the difference there is that one student takes multiple exams, right? So there's the account for the bigger number on the bottom. As Hugh said, 2022 is when we started to fully fund the exams for our students. So you'll start to see there, 2022, 2023, 2024, the significant increase in the number of exams that are taken. And then in goal 4, if we're increasing participation, we also want to see that increase in student achievement. So as noted in 2024 on the previous slide, there were 530 exams taken by our students, which was double what it was in 2021. The percent of students who earned a 3 or higher currently in 2024 has just surpassed that number that we had in 2021. And that is exactly the trend that we want to see. In removing a lot of the barriers since 2021 and increasing our offerings, we expected to see that dip in 2022 as students are starting to challenge themselves and take on a more rigorous course load. There's a lot of growth that comes with that. Teaching practices, instructional practices, student habits all grow and change. So what's important to note is that the 2024 number is just over where we were in 2021. So we're trending upwards, and we're really excited to see what 2025 brings.
Goal 5, when you're increasing access and opportunity, and you're attempting to also increase achievement at the same time, you need to make sure you're providing structured support for your educators and students. So goal 5 is centered around providing that support for teachers and students who are involved in AP coursework. So this really has 5 phases in itself, and I can outline kind of where we're at and how we're doing that. So phase 1 talks about ongoing professional development for AP teachers. This has really been over the last year and a half. Prior to that, I would say it was kind of catch it if you can. And as an AP teacher, you are often the only AP teacher in the school of that AP class, right? So historically, it might have been incumbent upon that individual teacher to search out these professional development needs. Whereas now we have a structured approach through through summer workshops and fall 2-day workshops and summer week-long institutes where teachers can access that, and I'll get into that in a moment and how that relates to budgetary needs. Phase 2 is to build a bench of AP teachers. That's the phrase we use. So you don't just want the teacher who is teaching the course to be trained in teaching that AP course. Ideally, you have others in the department who are also trained to teach that course so that they understand the philosophy behind advanced placement, they understand skills that are needed to access advanced placement courses, and then if a shift is needed in teachers or a teacher retires or any of that, you have a bench to call from when that shift happens and you're not scrambling. Phase 3, provide increased student support through study sessions and mock exams. This is something that has been ongoing last year and this year. In science, math, and English, all of our students took full mock exams last spring and had them scored and sent back to them through Mass Insight, which was a really powerful and productive session, and we're looking forward to doing that and actually expanding that to some social studies classes this year as well. And we're prioritizing making space during the school day for students to do that. Phase 4, provide leadership support to incorporate strategic development of AP programming at Norwood High School. So many of the things that we've just talked about it, some of it we can do on our own, but sometimes we don't know what we don't know, right? And so having, working with leadership coaches who are experts in this area, and this is what they do, is really helpful for us as a leadership team. So last year and this year, we have an AP leadership team that consists of the two of us, Mrs. Regan, our guidance department chair, 6 through 12, Laura Mullen and Wendy Mannering, who are our co-AP coordinators, are also on that team. And did I leave anyone else out?
Is it Bob Harris?
Yeah, and we've had a couple teachers join in as well at different times. Really working with Mass Insight to understand these trends, to understand to build out an improvement or equity plan within each year and to work towards these goals. Phase 4, provide leadership support, just covered that. Phase 5, incorporate AP readiness skills into earlier grades and first-year academies. So we anticipate this being our next venture and closely tied into our launch of the first-year academy next year. One of the things we notice, and are not alone in noticing, is that our students perform relatively well in our AP courses, and we've increased our participation and achievement at the same time, which is excellent. However, we don't necessarily have a focused way of getting AP skills built into the curriculum ahead of time, right? And so ideally, we find a structured way to introduce that to students a long way ahead of the time that they're actually enrolled in an AP course. Certainly you might need support when you're in the course, but really what is probably more important is having those skills embedded into your instruction earlier than that. Just a shout out to our amazing team of teachers and students and the work that everybody has done over the last 4 years. This year, for the first time ever, as far as we know, Norwood High School was recognized by the College Board as an AP honor roll school. And they give gold, silver, bronze medals, and we achieved silver status, which is excellent, having not achieved it before and now moving into the category of silver, and even hit gold in one area. So basically what this means, last year you can see kind of the ratios there. Last year we had 247 graduates. Out of those 247 graduates, 137 took at least one AP course during their high school career. Out of 247, 92 of them achieved a 3+ on an exam, which is good for college credit at some colleges. Of course, every college has their own way to look at it, but 3+ is said to be passing the exam and good for college credit. And then college optimization, this is really impressive. 12 of our students in last year's graduating class took at least 5 AP exams during their Norwood High School career, and at least one of them in the early grades, 9 or 10. So that's a really new statistic that previously we would not have even been able to access. Excellent work by our staff and students trying to move forward in this area. Lastly, on slide 10, some budget implications. There are kind of 4 arms of AP that reach into the budget. One thing we'd request is ongoing funding of the exam fee. It is truthfully making a significant difference. This year's budget is to the tune of $40,000 to $45,000 allocated for that, and it is significant. Support of our first-year academy. As I said, we're looking to embed AP readiness skills into our teaching there. So by supporting our development of the first-year academy, you are indirectly supporting our efforts towards AP readiness. Third, ongoing funding of our Mass Insight partnership. This is our second year partnering with Mass Insight in this regard. Mass Insight is also the consultant that we used for our equity audit, but they have different branches of their company. And their kind of core or first branch was centered on supporting students and schools with AP readiness and AP achievement. That is $17,500 each year, and based on enrollment, that's the bracket we fall into currently and predict that we would continue to fall into that. And staffing support in general. Every time we make a staffing request, you never just hire an AP teacher, right? But every time you make we make a staffing request, it is tied into our goals of voice, choice, student support, access, and opportunity. So again, indirectly and sometimes directly, with a staffing request, you might be supporting our progress in our advanced placement coursework. At this time, we don't want to go on too long, but Mrs. Durain and I are happy to answer any questions you might have regarding this, and thank you for your time.
You need a breather? You okay?
Yeah, you can continue for a few more minutes. Thank you very much.
Just let me know. So thank you, Dr. Galligan. Thank you, Ms. Durain, for this presentation. This is a report that the school committee has asked for previously, and we're really happy to receive it tonight. Are there any questions or feedback from any of my colleagues?
I had a couple. I first want to say, first of all, this is a model presentation in terms of its efficiency and the information you have, so cheers to you on that. I am going to do, as a former teacher, my anti-AP thing. I understand that it's good, and you guys have obviously worked hard on this, and I understand that, and it will lead into a question, but I always just do like to balance out that, and I know you had said this, that a 3 is considered passing, but unlike, the common application where everyone accepts it, you could apply, and I'm making this up, a public institution that may require a 5, a private institution that may require a 3, and another institution that may not accept the score at all. So I always like to put that disclaimer out there. And then my question just about this was, and I see that, sort of we've moved APs sort of earlier in high school, and I see that, but just my question is with scheduling. When you guys go to schedule these, do you do, you need a certain number of students enrolled in an AP class? And then I guess my other question is, do you find with kids that take multiples, and you were describing it, but it's the singletons, do you find that there are issues with kids that are, want to take multiple APs, but just because of the schedule being what it is, that you're sort of forced into a choice of what you're taking?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, but. Yes, and.
Yes, but. I think we, one of the things that we do, you're more than welcome to come watch us do the master schedule, because we're like mad scientists, and when we get everything loaded and the engine runs the build, the first thing we look at is where the conflicts are and how we can best address that.
Yeah.
So last year we met on the first pass of the schedule. 96% of our we satisfied 96% of our students' requests. So go us. But as always, kids have to make hard choices sometimes, and it's gut wrenching. It really is. But we try to be creative, and we try to work with each individual and figure out solutions and possibilities with each one.
No, and I appreciate that. I mean, I do not need to watch you make a schedule. I see that at the school I work at. And
I'm dying for people to come watch what we do. It's awesome.
It's a lot. And I wanted you, I know you brought that up, and I appreciate it, that, you guys are doing everything you can, and we appreciate your hard work and everything you've done. And like you said, I think that's a really great skill of the hard choice or the first choice, where you have to rank order things and say, what do I want most? So thank you.
And I think, to your point about what colleges are accepting and not accepting, what was really validating for us, this year, we were part of the pilot for the Seal of Biliteracy, which is not AP related,
Yeah.
but students are now getting college credit for the Seal of Biliteracy.
Yeah.
And if they get the Seal of Biliteracy with distinction, they're getting more college credit. So UMass Amherst is actually offering 12 to 15 credits,
That's
which is
great.
like a whole semester.
Yeah.
And that's not AP related. So it's awesome, all the opportunities that kids can get, but you're right, it's dependent on the school.
It's inconsistent, right? Just, it's inconsistent in terms of the.
We can't control what colleges do, right? So every college will look at a student's transcript differently than the next college, right? How they evaluate credits, how they calculate GPA, and how they award credit for dual enrollment, AP, any international baccalaureate, any of those above and beyond advanced things that students can do. Every college has the right to have their own philosophy on how they determine that. So, I wouldn't say it's inconsistent, because each college is actually pretty consistent about how they look at it. And if you dig into like one school, and our counselors can advise students and families on that all the time. But each school has their own approach. Yeah, and we always say that, yeah.
Can you guys just briefly, for the public, and just talk about why this initiative started to shift Norwood to have a more rigorous AP program?
So I would say this is one element of helping students be future ready. So like tonight we're giving a presentation on AP, but like if you look at our school improvement plan, there's just as much, if not more, of a focus on other areas that will help students be future ready. So for many students, that could be AP, or even just access to it will help them be more prepared for their future. If you take an AP course and exam and get a 2, you are still more prepared for your future than if you did not go through that process, right? Also, we've put a tremendous amount of work into our career pathways, into offering some dual enrollment options, into offering alternative schooling options to help students be future ready. So this is one area, and one that gets a lot of attention, but it's certainly not the only one, and I'd even hesitate to say that it's like more important than other ones. It's an important one, and they all are. So,
Great, that helps.
yeah.
With the big picture, I had a question about the $45K for exam fees. Was a sliding fee ever looked at, or is that, because the way that I'm understanding you is that all Norwood students have all of their tests covered by
Yeah.
these?
So
Okay.
if you register for an AP course at Norwood High School, you take that exam. It is part of the course,
Okay.
and it is free to you,
And
and
was
has
it-
been for 3 years now.
Is there a reason, I'm just curious if there was a sliding fee ever looked at based on family need, or if that was discussed, and if it was, and then decided against for a reason, you know?
Yeah, I think that the quickest structural change and most equitable change you can make is to remove it, period.
Right.
So we were able to do that. So that was the ideal, and we were able to get the ideal.
Okay.
So I don't, yeah.
I would also say too, that now without free reduced lunch kind of calculations that we're looking at, because it's free for everybody, it'd be a really difficult process to figure out who would fit
Right,
in the
there's
sliding
no-
scale.
There
There's
are
no-
fee reductions given there, and that gets factored into our total calculation. So in that, and not everybody pays the same amount, but it all tallies up to that amount.
Okay,
Do you understand what I mean?
I think so.
Yeah, students can qualify for a reduced fee. That is included in that total amount.
What is the fee?
It changes slightly every year. This is,
Yeah.
don't quote me on it.
Yeah.
In the range of about $95 to $100, pushing 100, and then
For each test?
For each exam?
For each
For each exam.
Yeah.
Yep.
As I say, I think that's about what I paid.
Yeah,
when
yeah, it
this
is
went into effect.
pushing 100, but just don't quote me on the
Yeah.
exact number right now. And then you can get a reduced fee that brings it all the way down to, I believe, as low as
15.
but those are calculated within the number that we fund. There is not like,
Oh, so family need is in.
yeah,
is
that
involved.
number covers the full
Okay.
fees and reduced fees.
So the College Board, instead of billing the families, it's coming out of the operating budget for the high school, but they still look at each student to tally what we owe.
I
Is that
see.
accurate?
Yep,
The
it's
college
also,
board calculates
in general, like, the invoice always came to us, like, would always come to us, and then we'd have to collect individual checks or money from each student. That's not awesome, but.
No. Another budget question, the 17.5 for Mass Insight, is that a sunsetting program, or is this, how long do you foresee that partnership lasting?
This is our second year, so I think that's to be determined. It's certainly in our request for next year.
Mhm.
They are a state grant-funded program. This aspect of Mass Insight is a state-funded grant program, or partially state-funded. So their ability to offer their programming is dependent on state funding. So that can always change. Within that, the bulk of that money goes to priority and free or included access to the professional development for our teachers.
Okay.
So we can have as many teachers as we want in STEM and English attend their full week summer workshops and fall workshops every year if they want. So that is where you get most of your kind of bang for your buck. The leadership coaching is another aspect. The mock exams with scoring, the monthly sessions for students and staff is all built in.
And those week-long institutes for teachers run anywhere from $1,200 to $1,800 to $2,200. So it's like for them to do that built into the cost of what we get saves us on sending teachers to each one of those workshops.
And so you guys talked about building this bench and it being, you're in the, this building stage, so, and would be the second year to do that with them. So it's reasonable to think that maybe in the next couple of years, you'd still be,
Requesting it?
yeah.
I would say so. And I would also say, right, like, if I want to be an AP teacher and I get trained this year, that doesn't mean I shouldn't go the next year or
Right,
3 years
right,
after
right.
that, because it's
Things
you're constantly
change.
developing. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
So a comment, not a critique for anybody, but just a comment and a clarification and something that Mr. Luff, I would ask you maybe to think about as we move forward. These are great and important questions, and this is part of why in the past years I have said so often that the school committee needed to better understand school improvement plans, because you have, Dr. Galligan presented most of this to us in your school improvement plan, and I think with the past administration it wasn't always clearly told to us what was embedded in the school improvement plans, and there was not enough connection of the school improvement plan to the budget, which is why JJ, I kept hounding you and Matt all last spring about my budget questions with the SIPs and with the SOA plan, because then when we get these wonderful presentations, it ties it back. So I think just in like the foundational stage, Mr. Luff, if you could think as we are going forward, and I know we're not talking about school improvement plans tonight, but we are talking about strategic plan a little bit, and that ties into the SIPs, and just making sure it's all like comprehensively shared with the school committee.
I can do that.
I had one question on something you said, Dr. Galligan, and now it just left my brain. What did you say that I want to follow up on?
I have another
Go ahead,
question,
Kate, and then I'll
maybe you'll
remember.
think of it.
Yep.
This might be hard to say, but what's like the average class size? I'm sure it depends on the subject and all of that, but like you must have some with just a couple or a few.
So in general, and sorry, I believe Mr. Hiltz had asked this question. As a general rule, we typically wouldn't offer a class less than 10 or wouldn't run a class
Okay.
less than 10. There are exceptions to that rule, but generally speaking, that's kind of the number we try to hold to. Depending on the subject area, the competing needs of how many sections of other, so for example, if I'm teaching AP US History, but we have a big sophomore class, so we have lots of sections of not AP US History, we might have bigger sections of AP US History because you only have so many teachers that are licensed in history, right? So it can range from year to year. Average in a core class is probably 18, if I had to ballpark a
18 to
number.
20,
Yeah,
yeah.
in a
Yeah.
core AP. In that
Some of our
range.
AP classes are as big as, like, as low as 10, as big as 26.
26, yeah,
So.
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I remember my question. You had mentioned, part of the freshman academy, but this just the overall goal of the AP readiness is getting the skills in earlier, even before you take a AP class. And I'm sure that's like a multi-phased approach. But could you just give us a quick idea of what that means?
Sure, right. So there are skills that academic and non-academic or non-content specific skills that you're working on. So I'll share, like, this year as we prepare for our launch of our first year academy, we already have 14 out of 15 teaching spots filled for that, which is remarkable. And with that, we have 3 teacher teams that are meeting and already doing common planning time and kind of practicing and preparing to make recommendations for the first year academy. So an example is one of them is looking at how students understand main idea. And that relates to note-taking, for example, because if I'm taking notes in a class, some students will write everything, and some students will write nothing because they don't know where to start, right? What you actually need to be doing is identifying what is the most important thing I need to be writing and summarizing it,
Got it.
right? So one group has specifically started looking at note-taking, and that has evolved into identifying main idea and being able to pull and summarize that. And so they're going through this whole inquiry cycle about a skill, and I would argue that that is a true AP readiness skill, because if you can do that, you're going to take notes more effectively and efficiently. You're going to retain that information and be able to turn it into something else, right, in your own words. So
And
that's an
transfer
example.
that,
Yeah.
no matter
Skills,
where.
yeah.
That,
No
make,
matter
that
where
makes
you go.
total sense.
Yep.
And then, Mr. Luff, this is probably more a question for you and Dr. Munoz, but a lot of what we're trying to do at the high school and support at the high school can't happen in isolation at the high school. So my bigger question is, how and when do we look at some of the things at the Coakley? So, for example, topics that have come up in the past that we really haven't gotten resolution on yet, or it has changed year to year, is around math leveling. Like if kids are taking advanced math in 7th and 8th grade or just 8th grade. I know there's a lot of discussion around like how kids come out of the Coakley into the high school and what guidance counselors at the Coakley are recommending for leveling at the high school. Are kids going into bio or physical science? Like there just seems to be a lot of decisions that happen before Dr. Galligan and Mr. Rain would have a say or control or whatever the word is I'm looking for, but fits into the plan. So how and when does that get looked at?
I mean, I haven't looked at the coursework at the middle school in depth myself yet in terms of how that filters up into the high school. Obviously, course scheduling at the middle school is starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about that now. So I'll have to talk to Dr. Frexick and really work with her on where that is. Dr. Munoz, do you know when they start that process?
I mean, they definitely have honors courses in the middle school and obviously regular. So it happens at the middle school. I'm not sure which grade it happens at. I actually just met with our math department today. I met with the math department chair and then our elementary math coordinator just to talk about curriculum in general.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a conversation that we should probably have more further and further detail because, to your point, if we are serious about getting kids prepared to go into the high school versus the high school preparing them, what choices and decisions do we have to make at the middle school or even upper elementary to make sure that kids are not getting tracked?
Yeah.
Sorry, just quick. When you presented the Entry Academy, the 9th grade program, I thought you guys said that you were talking in the middle school about.
Yeah, and that's a significant goal of it, is increasing the coordination there. So, that's underway. We're already also, we're beginning our course selection process shortly. And with that is a ton of collaboration, especially between counselors at each level. And we're trying to find ways to make that more efficient and effective with students and help students understand how their choices now impact outcomes in the future, right? And that's really hard to understand when you're 14, right?
Yep.
But our job at the high school is also to make sure that if choices that you made put you somewhere and you decide that you don't want to be in that place anymore and you would rather go this way, that way, whatever, to support you and help you get to where you need to go. So it's all
right, to allow for more opportunities for upward mobility
Yeah.
at various points. And one of the ideas of the first year academy is that you're kind of not relying as heavily on 8th grade course recommendations, because 9th graders will then have a similar experience and then have opportunities to branch out there, right? So kind of like, generally speaking, the longer you can delay any type of track, for lack of a better word, the more students you're going to have that move into a more, or have access and opportunity to advanced coursework, the longer you wait, right? So.
We have some work to do on vertical alignment, though, absolutely. I can bring you back more of an update on that.
Yeah, just super quick, and then I can talk to you offline.
Yeah.
But like one example is with math. So a number of years ago, I think it was in 2021, because Maya was still on the committee and she had a lot of questions. So it was before you, Kate. The school committee had decided we weren't going to level math until grade 8, and then somewhere along the line, it's now leveled again in grade 7. So that's just one example that I could give you. And then just another area, listening to everything that the high school's trying to do, not just AP, but the Seal by Literacy and the Pathways programs, is the world language curriculum. I asked before, and I'll ask again, if the way that we are running those classes, especially as we're looking forward to the 5 through 8 in the fall, are we setting our students up, grades 5 to 8, to do all the amazing things that they could do in the high school, or is there something structurally and curriculum-wise we need to get in sooner? So those are just 2 examples of why
You
I'm
want me to
asking.
answer that now, or you want me to wait? It's not fair without Margot
Cindy
here.
and I had this conversation, so we can answer this later, yes.
Yes.
But I think if anything, it's more structural decisions that have to be made and choices have to be made. So it's not that things can't happen, it's that we have to choose what our values are as a
Yeah.
district and where we want to go.
Yeah.
And then obviously put some budgetary resources around that, and then go.
Yeah, and then last thing I'll say, and then you can take it back over, Emery. It's that to tie that back into the budget thing that I was saying earlier, that's where the school committee really understanding the budgetary implications of the school improvement plans is critical. Dr. Galligan has done an amazing job being very successful in his school improvement plan. At some other schools, principals haven't been as clear or supported in the budgetary aspect of their goals, and then the goals haven't been reached. And when they come to us as the school committee, we really have the responsibility of looking at that whole district and how do we support everybody. So just big picture.
Fair enough.
But thank you so much for coming.
you all.
Thank you for
Take care.
having us.
Okay, Emery, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Teresa, for chairing to start. I apologize for being late. My flight home from work for my work trip was very delayed. I kind of wish we had standing desks as a committee because I've been sitting for hours, and it was not fun. But that, thank you so much, Dr. Galligan and Mrs. Dre, for coming and give us that PP update. And our next item on the agenda is the superintendent report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before Dr. Galligan leaves, I did want to share one quick update that we heard today. And I haven't been able to speak to any of you about this, so it will come as a surprise. I will hear that we know. DESE reached out to us today and notified us that our current school year calendar is out of compliance based on a requirement that graduation ceremonies, as well as the last day of school for seniors, occur no more than up to 12 days prior to the last day for the school itself. So I will
Have
quickly.
we ever been in compliance?
We have, absolutely.
Has DESE
ever
enforced that rule?
They have. I actually reached out to many of my colleagues today who are in similar circumstances or were in the past. Typically, this occurs with school districts who start after Labor Day for students. But this year, with the extended winter break, it brought us a little bit further out with the last day of school. But also in Norwood, the tradition has always been for the first Sunday in July and June to be the day for graduation. So the schedule was made with that in mind. And I will, oops, I don't want to do that. Sorry about that. Hang on 2 seconds. Lost my share. Okay. So as you can see, maybe. Make this bigger. I will try to run over to June here. June 1st is the graduation ceremony date.
Yeah.
Our last day of school is the 18th. So seniors have to have their graduation date and their last day of class no earlier than 12 days. So Monday the 2nd has to be their last day of school to actually attain the 12-day period until graduation. So my colleagues have said that they actually requested DESE actually change their ruling on them, and DESE is very inflexible with this. So there is inflexible. So it is something that we will have to fix. We looked at many options today. Dr. Gallagher and I met, Dr. Muniz and I met, and we looked at a few different things. The first thing that we looked at were, are there any PD days that we can switch, right? So we can take a PD day and switch it with the student day. Unfortunately, we have used all of our PD days already this year. The other options are looking at vacation weeks, which is very challenging. I will say that parents have already scheduled their vacations, teachers have already scheduled their vacations. I would also say the other option would be to just move the graduation, the last day for school for seniors up to the 2nd, have graduation on Thursday or Friday evening or this next Saturday. But I will also say that many parents and grandparents may have already bought tickets and events, schedules, all those kind of things. So it's a challenge either way. So one option is to move the last day of school for seniors up one, which is not necessarily a school committee decision, right? Because you have the calendar here. And have graduation on the 7th or the 5th or the 6th in the evening. That's some feedback that Dr. Gallagher will have to get. The other option, which is an option that I think I need to bring to you for consideration, not tonight, but just for you to start considering and maybe come back to in 2 weeks, is the option of looking at Good Friday, which is April 18th, and either making that a full or half day of school that day. If you were to do that, then the last day of school for all students would then move to the 17th, which would be 12 days after the last day for seniors, and it would be in compliance with the DESE regulation.
What is the last day for seniors right now?
It'd be the 30th.
Yes, and then Sunday is June
30th.
1st is graduation. So if, in other words, we could have graduation on Monday, June 2nd, and be in compliance.
That's correct.
So we're one day short, is our
We
understanding.
are 1 day short.
We
The
don't have-
DESE has said we're 1 day short.
We don't have to make a decision tonight.
I don't want you to make a decision today. If you're talking about, and I'm giving you the option of Good Friday, knowing that that is a controversial topic, and I would not want that decision made before this feedback from the community or whomever, and I would seek that actually over the next few weeks. It's kind of a bad situation for anyone, either the seniors in the senior class and their families, for folks that celebrate Good Friday, and obviously Good Friday too. People have access to religious exemptions, right? So nobody would be penalized if they didn't come to school that day, that kind of a thing. But there are also vacation weeks that people have planned as well that we have to, look at too. So
Can we, do we have to formally make a motion, or can we just formally ask between you and Dr. Galligan that you guys solicit feedback in some way and
I
come
will.
to us with
you
an update?
Don't even have to ask. I will solicit feedback. I think I need to. And then I'd come back to you at our next meeting with some recommendations.
Okay.
And if you have any other ideas that you want me to look at tonight, you're welcome to ask me those or give them to me before.
So the last day for seniors can't be more than 12 days than the last day for everybody.
In high school.
12 school days.
We
I just want to say this
anonymously-
is a very Massachusetts problem, by the way, because where I grew up in Pennsylvania, we went to school just as long as everybody else, and our graduation happened the week after school let
Yeah.
out. So when I moved to Massachusetts and my kids came in the school system, I was like, what are you talking about? I never even knew there was that rule of
And then
12
if
days.
you're an athlete, you generally still have to come back and keep
For
playing,
practice.
especially if you go into the postseason. So you're not really out of the system yet.
So again, the only options that I see so far is moving the last day of school for seniors to Monday the 2nd, which would push graduation off to Thursday or Friday evening, or possibly Saturday, the next following Saturday afternoon, or making Good Friday a full or a half day of school and moving that last day of school up for everyone to the 17th, which would then put us in compliance and leave graduation on the 1st of June as it has been.
Since you have it up already, we do come back on the 2nd of January, correct?
We come back on the
Yep.
2nd of
Yeah.
January.
Just
yes.
double checking.
Yeah,
that
we
there
already
wasn't
changed
an
that
ex-
this year, that there wasn't a PD day.
Right.
Yeah, just double check
Yeah.
that that wasn't.
Okay.
I will
Sure,
be-
you're looking into this, but any of our contracts currently still have Good Friday off? Because our food services did, which
I
is
look-
why we didn't change it when we made this calendar.
Yeah, because
That one got changed.
That one got changed.
I
That
feel
one
like
got
with the
changed.
negotiations over the summer, we were to change it, but
We
we had
changed
already
it.
approved the calendar, so we didn't go back to revisit.
Yeah.
That's right. So
We
all
had
the
to have the
contracts
calendar out before.
we went
yeah.
through.
So
Will
that-
you bring back a recommendation at our next meeting, or how long do you think it'll be until?
I think we need to solve this sooner than later because people have their plans and their scheduling, and did they get a party site? Did they
Yeah.
buy tickets to come in for the week? I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
so just to what Teresa just asked. I heard correctly, no teachers are obligated to have Good Friday off.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
But they could still take it as a religious
Yeah.
holiday.
There's
So
religious-
That has been, always been one of the discussion points about staffing and how many students would actually be in the building if that, so just,
That's correct.
that has always been.
This would be a good way to find out.
And we can't make half days whole days, because that doesn't count, right? Because the half day already counts.
Somebody
towards
already
your-
asked me that. Can you put 2 half-days together in one? I said
Like, we
no, because
can't
the
just
half-days
do
count
some-
as a school day.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
count as a school day. We just count hours for the whole year, but then the actual days, 180 days.
Yeah.
So Desi actually reviewed our calendar and notified you?
Yeah, so
We're
we're
getting
doing
audited.
we're doing the program review, and we had to submit
That's
a
why.
ton of data, which
That's
included
why.
the calendar, and they included different
That's
things.
why.
And so they as they're reviewing our coordinated program review piece, tiered focus monitoring, they came in and they saw that, and they contacted us today and said, this is a no-no.
So will you, so I know you reached out to colleagues who said they are inflexible, however, DESI,
You wanna try again?
DESI administration does change. So is
This
it
is-
something that we
this
are
was
gonna
thi-
at least go?
This was this year and last year in 2 different districts.
I was gonna say, could we at least try? I mean, that just,
I
You know
will
what? It's-
try.
It's
I will try.
consistent.
it's a day.
It's consistent. They've pushed attendance, like you.
Yeah.
I would be
see
very
where the
surprised if they
decisions
had, especially if they said to somebody, next door that you can't, and then
Yeah.
here
And
it's.
maybe someone next door was like 3 days, and we're just, I'm just saying, it would be a shame if we did not try, and
I
they
could
were like,
certainly
oh, it's
try.
only a day, of course we would let you do that, don't do it again.
I will certainly try.
All right.
It's in the law, though. I'm not reading this 12 days in the law.
I don't know if it's in the law.
It is. It's in my
definitely-
office. It's a piece of paper. I just took it out a little while ago. It is, yes. It's a regulation.
Really?
A policy.
Teresa's trying to find it right
It's
now.
actually,
find
it's
it.
actually,
Say policy or regulation.
it's a reg.
Because it says that the board encourages school districts to schedule high school graduation as close as possible to the scheduled closing
Okay.
date of the high school.
Now keep on going.
I am. Oh, shoot, no.
Let's just,
Get down to like the second paragraph after that,
Yeah,
maybe.
and the school graduation may be held up to 12 school days before. But it says the school graduation may be held.
And go before school graduation.
I don't see it, but okay. I'm not doubting you. I'm just trying to.
It's the last day for seniors, and nor school graduation can be held up to 12 days.
7.5 years in the seat, and I just learned something new. Okay.
Okay. So I will touch base with Desi, and I will come back with a recommendation. Well, different ideas for you guys to debate next time.
I mean, my only other, like, just playing devil's advocate is, because of course, if we were to have, if we have snow days. I mean, we've always scheduled the first Sunday of June, and then you have snow days, and that definitely had to have pushed us in the past 12
They
days.
do, and that would happen.
100%.
That would happen in a lot of districts, but it's the scheduling of the last day, the original calendar.
Can you
Of course
keep
it is.
graduation as is, but schedule the last day on the 2nd and encourage the seniors to come?
But it's graduation or, so there's two. If you read that reg, there's 2 different things. It's graduation and not or and the actual last day have to be no more than 12 days.
okay, so we'll wait to hear more.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so next up, thank you, Dr. Gilligan, very much. I appreciate it. we have a strategic plan update, and this is meant to be a very broad overview of the strategic plan process and where we are now. There's going to be more detail to come to you on this January, February, when we try to give more recommendations for how to move forward that are tied in with my entry plan process and my findings. So please take this as just a very general overview of where we are at the moment, knowing that there's a lot more work to do on this. Obviously, we have a one-year strategic bridge plan that was created by the administration and approved to the school committee last spring, as our 5-year plan ended about a year ago. I think I said a lot of this already. Again, this is a general summary rather than any kind of a significant measurement of progress. So just a quick couple of notes on the priorities themselves. The first priority was instructional focus, talking about PLCs and inclusive practices for multilingual and special needs students. Our desired outcome was to have 50% of teachers demonstrating an improvement in instructional practice by monthly coaching and observation sessions. And I'm going to let Dr. Munoz do the first priority update, if you want to do that.
Yeah, so we obviously wanted to give professional development around our instructional focus, and we've exceeded that already, giving 2 days of a full day professional development regarding cooperative learning practices. We happened on November 5th, Election Day, and then obviously before the school year started. We also kept our professional development provider here to allow coaching opportunities for coaching in the classroom with their actual students, so teachers could sign up and receive coaching after the professional development. And we also provided opportunities for them to sit down with some of those coaches in lesson plan and say, how can I actually use this in my lesson prepare? We had teachers from all schools reach out, and so myself, a couple of the district personnel were able to go shadow with these coaches and sit in with these teachers and see how the process works, to see, obviously, to build capacity so we don't have to keep on bringing in outside providers, that we can actually do the work ourselves. And we've been sharing practices through collaboration. So like school leaders come into our administration meetings, they lead in a cooperative learning fashion and get coaching as well. We go into classrooms and we see it. I know Dr. Luff and I have talked about, as we're visiting schools, walking classrooms and what we're seeing in classrooms with teachers, and so we're seeing the practices amp up and students are using more engagement strategies. We just don't have that quantitative number yet of 50%, but we're getting there between us and the school leaders and walking to the school.
I would say just about in every classroom I go to, I see cooperative learning in practice, which is really lovely. And it's getting better, right? I mean, I've been into classrooms where I've seen, instruction and said, well, okay, so this is okay. And then I go back a month later and I really see it in action and the improvement. It's fascinating. So, and that's, a lot of the work of our principals, coaches, and Dr. Munoz. Priority 2 was about data analysis and progress monitoring, looking at a 5% increase in student proficiency levels in targeted subject areas by mid-year assessments. So this is really the Mustang metric piece. So Dr. Munoz, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we have a program called Mustang Metrics that Joe Kidd and I kind of work with this vendor to help get all of our metrics together and house in one place, so we can look at Star Renaissance data, MCAS data, we can look at AP course taking, we can look at Mass Core Pass, all in one-stop shop, so we can actually take things and put things together. And then now schools are having data teams to meet, and so they get their team to meet, they look at the data, we can pull the kid up and we can see what a kid's doing on their DIBELS tests, and then what are they doing when they get Tier 2 instruction. And so we're continuing to build that program this year with our vendors. So we have people look at it and say, okay, is it reading the way we want it to read? Is it giving you the right information we want it to give to you? So we can make more data-informed decisions. And if they say, well, we would like to actually see it this way, is one of the reasons why we went with this vendor, because they customize it for us, versus if you go to another platform, it is what it is. I kind of think of it as like the Apple or the PC. PC is customizable. Apple is you get what you get, and that's the way the app works. We got the PC version, even though I'm an Apple guy, so that way we can customize it. So like I talked to Dr. Galligan, I said, hey, is it showing the right numbers for the high school stuff that you want to see? And him and I look at it, and he can say yes or no, or we want to change this, or let's add this metric in there. We want to filter it this way to look at it this way. So we meet with them every Monday and talk with that company about it, and they continually make adjustments for us. So it's been a really successful product. When Dr. Luff is asking for data that you guys may be requesting from him, he just shoots me a text. We pull up Analytic View. It's right there for us. So it's been really, really great helping us use data to make decisions. You can also see like, what is the most called out day for a teacher? Like right now it's Friday, go figure. So it just gives us all the different ranges that we want to see.
And if you don't know, when I first heard the words Mustang metrics, I said, "What is that?" And it turns out that Joe Kidd, was Joe's
Coined it, yeah.
Yeah, coined it. Mustang metrics, the new name for Analytic View.
Yeah, the company is called Analytic View, so we keep on saying Analytic View. We're like, let's just call it something that's ours. And so Joe Kidd said Mustang metrics, and so it's Mustang metrics.
I like it. That's good.
We have a climate and culture goal for safe and supportive schools. We wanted to make sure that we had culturally relevant, trauma-informed, and social-emotional responsible practices to decrease disciplinary incidents and increase in students feeling safe and with belonging. So we have some work there. We've been implementing Character Strong within our schools. Dr. Munoz talked about the cooperative learning strategies to really increase the student discourse through class building, team building with SEL content, and that is what we're seeing, right? Your shoulder partners and and really a lot of good conversations happening in the classroom with the kids. There are behavioral intervention positions that you have put into place. We're trying to get the focus on Character Strong or other SEL, so it's more of a coaching model than it is intervention direct with kids. Obviously, there is some of that work, but the idea is to actually coach teachers to be able to implement that so it stays within the class as we go on. More to come on that when I talk about the grant later. Researching and piloting SEL, social emotional learning screeners. You'll hear more about that later from us as well. These are screeners that will actually look specifically similar to how DIBELS looks at reading or STAR, maybe math. This is how we can look at social emotional learning for kids, all kids, as a generalized screener. We have district-wide crisis team that we kind of implemented or reinvigorated, I guess, this year, as well as developing school-wide crisis teams to carry out some of the goals of that work. You'll hear about, I think, more of that next meeting at our executive session. We have a Unit A contractual team that is looking at disciplinary issues, safety issues. We're really coming together. We've had one meeting to really discuss, what language we use for what kind of behavioral events, for what kind of incidents to happen, and what kind of interventions we could put into place, and what kind of data we really need to collect. So that's starting, so that's really good. And we've done a lot of work with the ed team now on discipline practice procedures, and we're trying to get the report streamlining better. So how we're dealing with discipline processes within our schools. And so hopefully that all kind of comes together to move this plan forward and this goal forward. Sense of belonging. So this is about attendance rates, and there's a baseline increase in attendance rates that we're looking at for student support. This is where we're really looking at the family engagement liaisons that we have put into place. We've increased those now to 6, which is fantastic. There's one at what schools are they at right now, Dr. Munoz?
The high school, the middle school, Balch, Willett, and one is a Norwood community member that works that's continued to do the job. It's not her first year with Norwood Public Schools, and I feel like because we have 2 at the high school right now, so that's I think it's 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Might be missing one. But
Yeah. And so they're targeted right now in certain locations.
Well, we have in our first meeting next week to go review. We want to make sure that all 9 schools get support, and so how are we divvying up that support, and who's gonna be able to cover what and this and that, and maybe geographical, maybe like relational. We actually mentioned this to the school leaders today, and so to have them give us feedback on how we can better leverage them, because we know that during the day they have a schedule, they're teachers, they may do stuff, and so they can't really do those things during the day, but what does it look like after school to work and help support? Because a lot of them have attendance teams now. A lot of them want to reach out to their families more often than not. So,
Sorry, are we calling these the family engagement liaisons?
The family liaisons,
Okay.
yeah.
That are also teachers.
We also began central registration, I think it was last year. With that, we were doing a tour of the Savage earlier this year, and looking at all the different space, and I was wowed with the amount of space, and I got lost a few times. But as we toured through looking at what we could do for space changes, we were downstairs where Extended Day stores a lot of the supplies. It's way at the end of the building as you come in. And we thought at that point that space down there, if it could be fixed up, would be an incredible family engagement center. One, because it's accessible. It's one of the, right now when families come in, they're going upstairs, they're going all over the place, and it's not very accessible for families at all. And they're going all over the place to get different registrations, whether it's they have to get up to transportation or to student services or to see somebody through ELL for translation, or just a registration through Sherry, who's done a wonderful job at that. So our idea was maybe we can do something down there, and I don't want to say fortunately, but there was a incident in that room where the ceiling came down with a flood, and now that is going to be fixed up based on insurance monies, which is lovely. So it actually brought the idea back to us that we would love to be able to move and shift to make that a family engagement center where transportation is located down there, closer to the bus garage, where our ELL staff or a registrar or our special ed staff can actually set up appointments down there with families when they come in and come down and kind of be there to have them support them and come in right in that one location, which would be lovely. So it wouldn't cost any funds for the district. It's just locating people down there and make sure we streamline our registration system and appointments as we go on. So that is an idea that we're working on to bring families together. I have to have conversations with WIC possibly. I mean, that might be something that they would like to do too. We have kids, coming up with parents coming up with strollers and going up 2 flights of stairs. So I think it could be more accessible and better for families too. So that's one option. Do you want to talk about the climate survey at all, JJ?
Yeah, so we obviously talked about this at the end of the year when we did the plan. Is that we already knew Throughline, which is formerly known as Highlander CRISP, is what they called it. There was surveys that went out to students, and so we've been doing those surveys, and so we're going to continue to obviously do those surveys mid-year and end of the year, and use a couple of those buckets of information. I believe school climate or school safety was one. Sense of belonging was another one. As a district lens, even though the schools get the other categories to look at within their own schools to see how are we doing as a district. And then, in addition, we started surveying staff last year on just climate and culture, instructional leadership, and all those other things. And so we're going to continue that survey process. I worked closely with Jody Smith, who's in the room right now. Last year we talked about those surveys, and she's like, yes, it'd be great to hear teachers' voice. And so I think teachers at first were a little apprehensive, thinking that we're going to find out who did what. But I think that after they saw how we use the data, that hopefully they'll be more willing to take the survey, although we did have a lot of responses last year mid-year. But now this year, we did.
Oh,
We did. Yeah, we did. And now we want to make sure that we're reaching out to families. We currently reached out to families in the primary grades for surveys, and so now we want to do it to the whole district. And so we met with the school leadership team this morning, all the school leaders and the district administrators, and we started looking at parent survey questions to implement, what buckets of areas we want to talk about. And so we started having those conversations, and then probably in January sometime, Dr. Luff will go ahead and send out a survey for families to give us, their thoughts on maybe school climate or school safety or, any of those categories that we feel are important for us to improve upon in the district.
So the surveys that happened last spring or at the end of the year for teachers and students, those were looked at this fall or in the beginning of this year by
So the ones that were
leadership?
mid-year, principals got that data immediately, and they had during staff meetings, like Dr. Yalligan, I'm pretty sure your teachers looked at those student surveys very, very closely, and that's he pushed for the apples things of like, I want to continue to do the through-line questions because our teachers want to see progress over the next 3 or 4 years. And then when we did the staff surveys, we sat as an administration team, we looked at it from a district lens, and then every principal got their school results and were able to go back to their schools and talk with their teams. And some teachers were shocked at the results for some of the questions. Some teachers weren't surprised at some of the results. And so, but it allowed teachers to have a real conversation with principals. I think maybe some principals did it more effectively than others, but it was something new for the district, and so we're going to continue to work on that and help get better. But I think transparency and honesty and being able to have that communication and allowing that dialogue is very important for us.
Thanks.
The next priority was investment and resource allocation. So this is obviously a budget process, but also human resources. We wanted there's actually 3 task force in priority 3. The first task force is based on HR and to ensure that we are gaining efficiency regarding HR matters in NPS. So the goals talked about key stakeholders coming together, having conversations, setting goals on recruitment, set strategies, staffing levels, retention, employee satisfaction, and so on. Lisa Yu, and I'll say you, helped us with this progress update. She does have stakeholders identified for this. Her and Mr. Manning are working together a little bit on both of these. We do need a school committee member for that as an aside, so if anybody's interested in joining the HR piece, it would be great. You've seen the HR presentation to the committee already, so you see the work that's happening between the schools and the HR department, which I think has been really good. Lisa's regularly with us at our as part of our cabinet meeting every Monday, where we talk about district-wide things, and she gives supports. We created a staff handbook together, or modified that and made sure that they were involved in that. A tremendous amount of forms have been revised, created, and made electronic now, as you heard before. We have new procedures in place for workers' comp, for investigations, for student and staff incidents. ArcSed is the program that we use now for looking at policies and protocols and mandatory training each year. That's been in place, and HR was part of that. They are planning monthly HR meetings with the school principals to get out there to find out how what the principals are feeling, how they're thinking. There's a big conversation about how to effectively use Munis now for recruiting and onboarding. We have Munis for our budgetary management system in the town, and it also has an HR function, so this conversation's there, and we're involved in those. And then they're actually having their first task force meeting this week, I think, right? And the 9th. Yeah, so that is moving along. You'll see both the next two. The recommended updates for most of these is continue the priorities because it's important to have them, and I would not change them now. We'll tweak them a bit in a month or so as it aligns with the entry findings that I have. But for these two, the next two, there are questions about, do we need to have all of the board members from all the different committees as part of those meetings, in terms of efficiency-wise. So that's something to consider. Right now, for example, this one is supposed to have a member, I think, of, this is relevant committees and boards. But the next one is actually for the budget, and that talks about members of Finance Commission, Budget Balancing Commission, and School Committee members. So it's a whole bunch of board members from each board. So there are questions about whether or not you need to have as many board members, or we can kind of work through as an administrative team and do the work.
I wonder, and Anne-Marie, you can help me think this through. So all the investment and resource allocation, Anne-Marie and I worked on pretty heavily with Karen Sheridan and Sharice Taylor. And then when they both left, Matt Wells stepped in and worked on it with us. So there was a lot of transition. There was a lot of things changing. And I wonder if this one kind of got a little confused in translation. Okay. Because I think, tell me if I'm wrong, Anne-Marie, we were really envisioning this more as like what already exists within BBC, not recreating the wheel of another task force.
Admittedly, we had an offline conversation about this, and I'm like, I don't remember it being this big, and so that makes a lot more sense when you say that, because I was like, I don't remember it like that. And so there was, for example, some questions from other boards like, oh, that sounds an awful lot like BBC.
Yeah.
Why do we need somebody to be on another task force? So, so there was just that kind of questioning of it, and I was like, I don't remember it that conversation going that way, but if it's in the strategic plan, I voted on it.
I can go back and look at my notes.
I'm really glad you said that.
I remember what Teresa's saying. I just wasn't sure because obviously Tim and Sean are new to the district, so we want to make sure that we're obviously crossing all our T's and dotting all our I's. And so I'm like, well, if we need to do another committee, let's do one. I said, but I when I thought while I was writing this out, I'm like, some of this work was already done. We're just going to further this work and get more detailed into it. Hence, the BBC is already happening. So, and I know
think this was it's meant to be more like within BBC. These are the things we would bring to BBC, or we would try to work with them on. And I'm really glad you kind of said that, because I was like, I don't remember it like that, but I voted on it, so it must have.
Well, it's gotten a little confusing too, because we've seen so many different templates. Yeah.
Well, and I brought in a new kind of process that I wanted to do for the budget as well, which tied into, right?
Yeah.
A little more muddy. But we're doing this, right? So resource allocation practices, you have the town manager and myself meeting on certain things, right? An allocation that way. We'll hear later about our, going to the Finance Commission. And our work with BBC obviously is there too to talk about just these things. So I feel like the work is happening. So as far as what the goal is, I think it's happening, and all of it's happening. It's just not happening exactly as it's written in the plan. I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
And I think that's, in my opinion, and you guys can feel free to correct me, I think it's perfectly fine. I think the work is getting done, and
especially if it's, the rewriting is the confusion, not the fact that the work's not getting, like, it's
Right.
it's the iterations of people and the rewriting that's causing confusion at this point, not
Yeah,
the fact
'cause-
that it's not getting done.
Because what we did, Dr. Galligan, you may remember because you were in all those meetings, like when Mass Insight led us through it. So we, over the years, narrowed things down and combined, and then there were a whole bunch of things that we said we're still going to do, but we're no longer calling them like strategic priorities. I think that was like all of Objective 4. But in Objective 1, we kept 1.3 and 1.5, and we melded them together. And 1.3 was the HR, because the conversation that we've been having for a number of years, which I acknowledged when Lisa was here last time, is happening, but really strengthening that partnership. And what the school committee had talked about before is ultimately having an MOU with the town on what HR will look like. So that's why we kept that in. And then 1.5 was just like a broad resource allocation in the budget. And what we had last talked about that I remember is so many of our initiatives, right, like have budgetary implications. And we didn't want to lose track of what we were supporting in the strategic plan and in the SIPs. And knowing where we are with the town with the override pledge over and so much transition ahead, we wanted to make sure that got captured. Does that help clarify?
It does. Yep, it sure does. And the good news is there is a lot of work being done on the budget. So, Mr. Manning is going through here. He's identified some stakeholders that can have a meeting in December. I don't know if you have a date in the books yet for that, Mr. Manning, or not. But budget planning's been happening in development, in collaboration with town partners, BBC and FinCom already. Sean's having weekly finance meetings with the finance department in the town over there. We've had our FY26 budget meeting with all of our school cost center managers so far. Some of you were at the school finance commission meeting, and we've done the budget balancing committee meeting as well already. So, do you know if you're having that meeting date? Do you have it on the books yet?
I don't have the meeting date.
Okay. So we'll have something, right, to kind of bring this together. But I will come back to you in January and say maybe we should modify it to look like this instead.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And then Mr. Luff, at the last budget subcommittee meeting, I think Anne Marie and I both said we'll share that role on the HR task force, just keep us both informed, because with her schedule in mind, neither one of us could commit to everything, but we'll share it. So you can just add us to that.
Okay.
Sorry.
And the last one was aligning the initiative of the middle school for the opening, right? The elementary study and the student service audit related to budget, facilities, and HR. We do have a task force meeting coming up there, just so you know, with multiple members, our department chairs, middle school principals, our director of fine arts. I think Dr. Galligan's actually invited to that one as well as our some elementary principals. We're meeting December 14th and monthly from there. We've already identified our general education teachers who are moving for the 5th grade. Letters are going out to them soon. We had approximately 12 teachers apply for those 12 positions. They were not all grade 5, but there were 12. So there will be some shifts. There will be some openings that we'll have to make at one building and voluntary transfers at another, but there will be volunteers only taken from that building that has a position that has to be removed first, right? So it'll be much easier than it would have been had we done the whole elementary shift earlier. So that's really good.
Great.
You've already made the decision on redistricting and the timeline, which is incredible here. There's been regular updates and feedback to school committee principals, union, and others. We've had regular transition meetings that have been held in coordination with Vertex and MSBC. We're meeting, I want to say, I feel like it's once a month. There's so many different building committee meetings, but this one's focused on transition itself for the team. And obviously, we've identified the student service vendor, which is fantastic. So that's all coming together, and I think it's aligning very well at this point. So that is the strategic plan updates for now. And again, we'll have more for you at a future date with probably much more metrics and details we go on. The last piece that I have, and this will be incredibly quick, is just the revised October 1 report, which I shared with you prior to this meeting. I just wanted you to have it before I gave it to FinCom. But we identified October 1 to October 1 now in some of these numbers. I do want to just point out a few things. What Dr. Munoz did last time was wonderful. He gave us the end of the year data from last year that we had, and then, you know, based on the difference between October 1 of 2023 and end of year last year and October 1 of 2024. Now I'm sharing with you the budgetary ones, impacts of October 1, 2023 to October 1, 2024, which is what the state looks at for funding purposes. There's an all-student number of 3,545 last October 1. October 1 of this year with 3,575, so you see an increase there. I do add the out-of-district numbers there. It's important to note because when they calculate the special ed percentages for the district, they add the out-of-district numbers in. So that's why you see two separate special ed numbers as well. For example, on October 1, 2024, we had 813 special ed students in district. Well, we had 886 total when you include the out-of-district. And they used the 886 out of the 3,648 to come up with 24.3% of special ed students in the district, which is lower than it was from the last count in October 1 of 2023. You'll see an increase in English language learner, increase of students with whose first language is not English. Low income and high needs are not calculated yet. That is a different metric that can't be calculated until different things come in from the state that we don't have yet. Low income identified by things like participating in state public assistance programs that we might not have that information, but the state will get that. It could be homeless, it could be transitional aid to families. And in order to get high need, they use the low income number to be able to do that. So we won't have those numbers until January or so. So those will come in later. But I did want to share that with you as an updated October 1 to October 1 count. Any questions on that at all? Okay. That's it for my report.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions about any of that before we move on? Great. All right. So next on our agenda is to discuss budget. So I will turn it over to Ms. Stewart to give a budget subcommittee update.
Yeah, it'll be pretty quick. So we last met as a budget subcommittee on November 14th. I did send out like a action step reminder email after that meeting. JJ, I did not include you, but should you like to be included going forward, I will add you. But everybody else got it around this table. So you do have access to, quick, like, hey, this is what we talked about and this is what we're planning. You have access to our budget subcommittee long-term agenda, which we spent time really working on and making a plan for the next couple of months. We spent a good part of that meeting planning for the FinCom meeting on the 21st, but Mr. Mannion and Mr. Luff will tell you all about that momentarily, so I won't go into that meeting. We have a number of meetings coming up. As you know from the FY26 budget calendar, budget is going to be a big portion of our meetings going forward. So we are meeting next on the 12th from 2 to 4 to get ready for what will be coming to all of us on the 18th, and we have quite an agenda for that meeting. And then we also have meetings scheduled for January 9th, January 22nd, February 6th, and February 28th. Each of those are from 2 to 4. We talked a little bit about how Mr. Luff is recommending we do a fee analysis. So you may remember Ms. Sheridan was telling us last year we should really look at all of our fees again. It's been a couple of years since we've done some of that work. So Tim and Sean have recommended that we really embed the fee analysis into the FY26 budget. So for example, when they bring us like the transportation cost center discussion, we will also look at transportation fees. So it won't be a side conversation like we've done in the past. It'll really be rolled into the whole budget process. Anne-Marie and I had asked some questions that Mr. Luff is following up on with Dr. Munoz around the SOA plan and budget, so I'm sure we'll hear more about that at an upcoming meeting. You already heard a little bit about the HR task force, and then we just planned out, on the school committee long-term agenda when all of our quarterly reports will be coming to the full school committee. But are there any questions or any topics that you want to make sure that, Anne-Marie and I do have on our radar or add to the December 12th meeting? Okay.
Thank you.
Fabulous. So, back to you.
All right, next on our budget, we are gonna get an update from Mr. Luff and Mr. Mannion, and we are recusing ourselves from having to talk about the FinCom meeting. We will leave it to you two.
This all
You
just-
didn't put my name on that agenda item, so.
I know.
I didn't.
Or mine either, and I was there.
You're welcome. This will be really quick. We had a wonderful meeting, I think, with FinCom on November 21st. We talked about our enrollment, the thing I just shared with you a second ago with October 1. We talked about our potential Coakley positions for next year, student service audit, which you know, this is information that you've already seen and already know. Our entitlement grants that you have consented to as of our last meeting, kind of an overview for them. Our quarterly one staff report, our quarterly one budget report, and then I made a nice pitch for an entry plan, assistance with them. But again, we just presented the following presentation, which is the enrollment report. The discussion that there are about 8 FTEs at minimum that we'll need for the Coakley Middle School as it opens up, whether they come from new position requests or they come from the overall current budget with shifts. We don't know yet. We did share that there at one point was 20-something positions or 17 positions that were there, and at one point 12 at the lowest. So I did share a minimum of 8 and kind of went through that process, similar to what I've done with you already. We had a conversation about the student service audit and academic discoveries. The grant reports, we went through in a slide with them just to quickly show what was funded. Did not give as much detail in the presentation as we did with you, but we did include the memos that we shared with you folks at the meeting with them, so they had those. The staffing reports we talked about, budget report, and we did talk about the budget calendar, some conversations around Chapter 70 Mass Health, as we've had a conversation about, and our extended day balance. Ultimately, I think it was a good meeting. It was 45 minutes or so. There were some great questions. I think that we had them answered within the presentation, which was good. But it was a good collaborative meeting, and looking forward to working with them as we move forward. So, Mr. Mannion, anything else you want to add?
I think that summed it up well. Yeah, it was a good conversation. I think they appreciated the information. I think it was productive.
Stuart, or Ms. anything you want to add?
Nope, I just appreciated I think it was a good meeting, and that probably one of the better ones we've had in a while.
Yeah, it was productive and efficient.
Productive, efficient. The information was there. The questions were easy to answer, and it wasn't. I didn't feel on the hot seat for sure, because we had the information ready. So I think that was really appreciated by all sides.
And of course, just the pitch. If you're out there and you're watching this on TV, you will see a QR code up here you can take a picture of to fill out a survey for my entry plan that would assist me in understanding the town of Norwood, the different aspects that you would like to see in the school system as we move towards our next strategic plan. So that QR code is there.
I've seen that in the Community Connections letter. Is that on our socials too? Or have you thought about putting it?
It should be on our socials.
You could put it on our socials, yeah, and then on the town page too. Probably.
Yep.
Have you pushed it out through your regular communications?
I have. That I have. Oh, I'm putting it everywhere.
Well,
though.
but I think Mr. Leff wants to go to other community members too as well, and
Yep.
so I don't get those regular communications.
How many responses do you have so far? Do you know?
About 280.
280.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Yep, we're moving forward. Yep.
Okay.
Have it get it up to students too, so it's out there.
Sweet.
Okay.
All right, any other
Oh, yes.
questions? All right, so we'll move to the next item is grant approval. So stay with the same team, add Mr. Munoz on, Dr. Munoz onto that one.
Let me talk about it.
Let's open this up here.
For now.
Okay, so I'll give you make it a minute. So we have a memo here that just talks about a competitive grant that was awarded. This is the same structure that we shared with you with the other grants. This went in this morning, and I apologize. We got identified. I think the grant got identified probably last Wednesday, and then we went on Thanksgiving break, and it was nice. Break was good. So there is a memo here that talks about a grant that was awarded for social, emotional, behavioral, mental health, and wellness in the amount of $148,575. It is a competitive grant. It has to be spent by the 30th of June 2025, and the expected uses are here. And Dr. Munoz, you want to talk about those?
Yeah, so we originally applied for this grant, applied for $150,000, and then they sent us, Dr. Luff and I, an email and said this grant was so competitive we had to reduce people's funding, and they reduced ours by just a little over $1,000. So I feel thankful for that. But when we applied for it, one thing that we needed to put in there because Dr. Taylor applied for this grant last year was for Coaching for Change. And so we know we have Coaching for Change in our schools this year. We haven't had as high a number as Coaching for Change college kids as we wanted to. They haven't been able to fill all those positions, so therefore we may have some flexibility in allocating some of that money elsewhere for Dr. Leff to think about. Another one is that we knew that we were writing family liaisons into the SOA, and so I put the family liaisons in there, so we have money for the family liaisons to help support their work as well. And then we know that with our safe and supportive vision that we want for all of our schools, some of our staff sometimes need safety care training, but we can't do it during the day. We can't pull them out, so sometimes we have to pay them to do after-school training, or maybe during PD time where like paraprofessionals are coming in when they're not required. So we also wrote it to be able to pay our staff when they want to do safety care training, when it's a day when they can't actually do it during the school day as well. And then DESE said, hey, if you want to do a mental health screener pilot, we will give you an extra $50,000. And so I asked Dr. Leff, he said, apply for it. He said, we'll talk about it. And so we put our name in the hat, and they said, here you go. So they gave us, I would say, the $48,575 that we can use for a mental health screener. And so we already started talking about it with our administrative team this morning about screeners for all students. And Dr. Leff can obviously speak more on that. But with that being said, I think this gives us some flexibility to move some monies around. So if we have some other supports for our SEL components, that we can say, okay, we can use this pay source to pay for something that we're already paying for, and then get something else with our SEL component as well for something that principals are seeking and asking for, whether it's behavioral supports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And one of the consistent things we heard at the elementary levels in the budget requests so far, the behavior interventionists, right? That has not gone away. It's probably the single most highlighted topic that we had at the budget meetings.
Yep.
And given the fact that we have shelter funding, and many of our students that we're getting the shelter funding for are accessing the family liaisons, we can shift some of those funds to those staffing to the actual shelter funds for this year as well. So with this grant, we would like to put some behavior interventions in place with the idea that they're kind of coaching and really focusing on how to implement Character Strong, right, and focusing on the SEL skills, not just as kind of a patchwork and an extra body in the classroom. So it's really got to be focused on strong intervention, and that would help support us in a likely budget request that I will provide when we come up to FY26 and have those conversations as a need for this district. The SEL screeners are there. There's so many different options for screening tools to try out. There are things like the DESA Mini, which is a very quick 5-minute kind of survey that the teachers do for kids. That then will identify whether kids are at risk and whether they need kind of a second-tier intervention. There's some that are called, like the FastBird, just one called the Sabers. It's spelled very interestingly, so it's SAEYBRS. It's a good tool because it is something the teachers have to do at the elementary level, a quick survey, but at the middle and the high school level, the kids actually fill it out themselves. And so it's actually some good data behind that. There's another one that's more clunky called the SSIS that we probably already have within our system. So there are different options out there, and we asked the principals this morning to identify some folks who might want to volunteer to try some of these things, just so we can kind of get a good feel of what might work, what might not work. So excited to try that. And I will say, while we do this, it's important to know that it will identify more needs, right? I mean, this is not something that's gonna help and assist us in intervening up front. It's gonna show us what we need to do and maybe help us target different interventions for kids for social and emotional learning needs. So those are the ideas that we want to use this grant money for. And tonight I'm looking for your approval for this grant application for the 24-25 school year, as outlined above.
May I ask a few questions? We have 2 behavior interventionists right now, correct?
That's correct.
So this would allow you to bring 1 to 3 more in?
Yeah, so right now we have 1 full-time at Callahan,
Yep.
and we have 1 that splits between the other schools. And so it's possible we bring in, if we bring in 1 more, then it can be 2 positions split between the other
Yep.
4 schools. If we bring in 3 more, it could be 1 for each kind of
Okay.
deal.
Okay, and then the Coaching for Change. I know there's a whole lot of back and forth on that. So we got money from town meeting a year ago that partially funded it. We used that money already, right, last school year?
That's all
We may have Tiny bit more, like $1,000.
Like $1,000.
Okay.
We pretty much spent that.
Okay, so that was like the last year assessment, getting it started. There was
it
some
the
summer
assessment
work.
and it was the summer work. We
the
also
summer
had
work.
Coaching for Change college students in the summer schools at the doing Coca Connects, doing
Yeah.
the summer program matters and all that good stuff.
Okay, and then we currently still have a contract with Coaching for Change, right?
Yes, for the whole year, and so that's where they weren't
Yeah.
able to. We asked principals how many people they wanted. They gave Coach Change number. They we'll get that number.
And we haven't been able-
They couldn't get that number, so they got some people in.
Okay.
And so they're currently working with principals now, and they apparently have more students lined up to start in the spring semester.
Okay.
So, but we know that what we budgeted for, we're not gonna have to fund that whole thing because they weren't able to fund this all for the full fall, so we actually have a credit with them.
Okay.
And so that's why I told Dr. Liff, I said, we actually have a couple extra dollars here.
Yeah.
That we can allocate somewhere else. And so-
Okay. Okay, and then the family liaisons in the SOA plan was coming from Title III.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yes.
this would allow some of the money to come from that instead of Title III.
Either way, so he talked about the migrant grant that we got.
Yep.
Title III, also we're money in Title IV.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, I was putting money everywhere just in case, because I know
Yeah.
this is what our focus was.
Yep.
And not knowing how much that, because last year the grant that we got for this grant was like 14,000.
Yeah.
Now we got 150,000, so I'm like, great! And so now we have more options, and so we definitely had money stored away in different pockets, but where those monies can roll over for like 18 months,
Mhm.
this money has to be spent by the end of the year. So we'll have to just prioritize on what we want to spend for this year,
Mhm.
and then we can have money saved for next year as well.
I would say it's the same thing with the shelter funding that we
Mhm.
get. That could end, right? So
Right.
we need to use that as soon as we can too.
Okay, and then just the last comment with the screener. With the mental health first aid grant that we collaborate with the town, we're a little behind. We were supposed to have a screener in place already last school year for grades 1, 6, and 9.
Mhm.
So Liz Barrett would be able to tell you more, Lisa Bourgeois probably also, but
We
I
actually have a
know.
training tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, talk to them because we're supposed to be figuring out a way to do behavioral and mental health screening in those transition grades. So
Good point, yep, it's a
yeah,
great point.
Just make sure we're
Yeah,
working on
let's
that.
touch base with Elizabeth. Yep, 100%. I'm glad you
Are
said
those
that.
transition grades next year too?
Well, so the grant was written for grades 1, 6, and 9.
I know.
So
I'm just speaking, yeah.
I know. I'm just saying.
But mental health screener is supposed to cover the whole district, so
Yeah.
we're supposed to be able to, so we can definitely start right there. I think that would be a good initial place to start, and then
Yeah.
where we find success of which screener we want, then we can expand it throughout the whole district.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's good.
Thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve this grant?
I'll make a motion to approve the grant application for supporting students' SEL, behavioral, mental health, and wellness for the 24-25 school year as outlined in our memo.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion before we vote? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so move on to the next one. Mr. Mannion, you have budget transfer request.
So thank you. There are two requests here. These are the first two, I believe, of this fiscal year that we're actually looking for approval or a vote. There are two different types of transfers. So to date, we've just had transfers, only a handful that we've reported in the monthly budget transfer report. So here are two. So the first one is sort of what I would call a regular budget transfer. It's within the operating budget, and it's within the Student Services Department. They have a surplus in their summer school stipends of $56,000. This is this fiscal year, so this summer's over. These stipends are not going to be spent. And they have needs for critical improvements that they want to purchase in supplies and equipment that the current budgets are can't support. So we were looking to move $25,000. So it's at that limit of $25,000, and it's also between technically the functions, because we're moving it from 2,300, which is instructional salaries, and we're moving it to 2,400, which is close, but it's instructional supplies and equipment. So we could get your vote on that one. The second one I bring to your attention, it's not really a standard one, and part of the question is whether you want to see these or not. But what it is it's within a revolving fund, and what I've noticed looking at all the revolving funds, so when we report to you on a revolving fund, you're pretty much just hearing about that revolving fund. Like, here's the fine arts donations account, right? But those funds really have sub-accounts when you look in our system. And the sub-accounts, the budgets, the revenue is always put in by the town on one sub-account, and then every year, they just look at the balances and bring it forward. So you're just hearing us report on the thing, but on the bottom line of that, which they're all solvent, but the individual lines look very strange, and we want to clean them up in the business office. That's essentially what we're doing. So the amount that's being transferred is large, but it's really all within a revolving account, so I don't think it crosses the functions, and I don't even know whether these, so part of the question is, I don't know whether you really need to vote on this one, and based on that, I probably have like 10 to 12 more. I'd like to clean up all the revolving accounts. So for instance, like within this one, which is just one of the building use revolving accounts for the Savage Center, there's a custodial salary budget that actually has a negative budget in it. And there's a custodial overtime budget that actually has a negative budget, because and it's been continuing for 3 or 4 years. Like the line ends negative and they just bring it forward. But when you roll up all the lines, the line that they put all the money into, which is the general maintenance line, has every money. So that at the bottom line, it all matches. But when you look at them, we're not used to looking at a negative budget amounts. Like when we talk about budgets, we talk about positive amounts. So it's just odd. So all we're doing is cleaning them up, basically. And I'd like to do all of the revolvings. I would have brought it to budget subcommittee, but I kind of want to get going on these.
Yeah, no. Listen, I'm all for positive budget lines.
So I mean, this one, the first one we need to vote on. The second one, you can say, if you want to clean those up, you don't need to vote, or you can vote it today, and I can bring you the other ones as we have them.
Yeah.
Or we could just report on them, or I could just do it and not report, whatever you tell me.
I mean, I would say based on our policy that we don't need to vote on this, because it's all within the same revolving fund, it's all within the same,
Does
like.
it cross function codes?
It's not really, because it's all in a revolving fund,
So,
It's not in a
right?
fund.
so this one in particular is weird because we kept it when we transitioned the facilities department. This is money that comes in from rentals? Is this the one?
Yeah, for the Savage Center. And it's all the budget's staying in there. It's just,
Yeah.
we're trying to clean up there's sub-accounts, like I said, that look very strange. So like the first sub-account, custodial salaries, has a negative budget of 114,852. After this transfer, it'll have a budget of 0.
Yeah.
And then the next one has a negative budget of 56,000, and it'll have a budget of 0.
Yeah.
So it's just like cleaning up negatives, so they're carrying forward every
Mhm.
year, and they look really odd.
Is this revolving fund supposed to cover utilities?
I don't know.
No, it doesn't. See, the first 3 lines, they exist, but charges rarely happen to those lines either. It's just, there's some lines that might have been used in a past year, but
Yeah.
again, the negative balance, these balances go back.
And the
3 or
only
4
way to get rid of
years.
that negative
And it
balance
just
is to do
keeps
this,
coming
yeah.
forward, and when you look at the accounts, it just looks strange.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to think with the MOU for the joint facilities. I don't think utilities are supposed to be charged to this account.
No, but the account, they could have been charged like 3 or 4 years
When
ago.
it was
Once the
completely
account
under the
exists,
authority of the
right.
school committee,
And
yes.
so once the account exists, it doesn't
Yeah.
really ever go away.
Okay.
So after these
Yeah.
transfers, probably moving forward, it's gonna remain 0, because
Yeah.
we're not
Remain
gonna
0.
actually be,
Yeah.
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 And I can say this is like what every revolving account, they look like this, so.
Maybe my advice would be to bring it to us as he cleans it up, just so we have a better understanding, since.
I don't,
Like in
yeah,
the
I don't think we
monthly
need to vote necessarily,
monthly
but just like
budget-
a,
I can bring it in the monthly budget transfer and just say, we cleaned up these without a vote, just so you're aware of it.
that's what I think is that would be a good idea, just to kind of give us like, oh, this is what we cleaned. I mean, because we just like to know
Yeah.
what got messed up and what,
Right.
what you've been fixing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it needs an official vote from us, and a quarterly update on that would be, or monthly is more than sufficient.
Yeah.
Is it the type of thing you could update the budget subcommittee on, and then if something arises to the need of the, just I'm thinking about our agendas.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
fair
happy to
too,
do
yeah,
that
that
too.
we
Just
could.
It's fair, however, and I'll bring this up when we go into our workshop. I'm very mindful of the sustainability of the school committee. This does not rest on my shoulders. So I feel that a lot of the budget stuff needs to be done more publicly than just in a subcommittee.
Okay, then
But
just come
the-
to us if there's a question with this stuff. I
Yeah,
think, right,
that,
if you're
it
okay
just
with
seems
it?
like the cleaning up, updating.
I think in any given month, you can just do a quick memo that says, cleaned up this account.
I can just
Right.
include it with the monthly budget
Yep.
updates,
Yep.
or
Yep.
transfers, here, which I've been doing. Here's some transfers in the operating budget. And by the way, we did these 3 or 4 revolvings, or we cleaned up these revolvings.
Yeah.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be a
Okay.
substantial conversation,
No,
so the
no,
memo
it's
is.
just an update base.
Yep.
So I
That sounds
guess
perfect.
based on that feedback, I would say if you could vote the one that's in the operating budget, the student services transfer.
Yeah, that one we definitely do. So does anybody want to make, or is any, first of all, any questions, concerns about that one?
Just one question. Why do we have the surplus in summer stipends? Did the money come from ESSER? Do we reallocate ESSER money?
You know what? One reason why we have a surplus is they ran 1 or 2 less weeks of their summer. I think they were gonna do 6 weeks and, or
They did
8
5 weeks
and they
instead of
went
6
down.
weeks.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And that was because of the space constraints
That
of the
was
summer?
this- Yep.
Okay.
So there were savings in various areas because of just, we budgeted for more weeks.
Right.
That was
Okay.
one of the reasons.
Okay.
Does anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget transfer from the special education summer school teachers account to the, is it Oldham Special Education?
Yep, it's
Instructional
special.
supplies and special education equipment, rep and repair, is that what that is?
Equipment and supplies, yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 4-0. Thank you very much.
Just a like really silly technicality. So the form is like what was approved by the superintendent. So
Mhm.
just change that to approved by the school committee for our records.
Okay.
Yeah. At the top, do you see what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then when you have a copy of that, let me know and I'll sign it.
Oh, yeah.
Given my travel schedule, it's probably best to bring them to school committee meetings, just so you know. Okay, so that brings us through budget. We do not have anything under old business tonight, and that brings us to policy. And Kate, would you like to give us a policy
Sure.
subcommittee update?
Yeah, we
Easy
met
peasy.
briefly on the 27th, the day before Thanksgiving, just to really formalize the change to IKF, which is the graduation policy, post ballot question, the MCAS question change. And so I can let Superintendent Leff explain that, but other than that, we talked a little bit about upcoming meetings. We meet on the 11th at 9 a.m. That's it.
Great.
We did look at the policy quickly for the agenda development, and there was nothing in there restricting us from modifying the agenda.
We did talk about that.
The chair and the superintendent can do that.
Wonderful.
This particular policy is IKF. There's one line that has now been crossed out. It simply is, students must also fulfill the MCAS competency determination or qualify for a waiver as required by the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. That line was removed from this policy with the adoption date changing, obviously, which would be updated today should you vote on this policy. And again, this aligns with the law that went into effect. Oh, it goes into effect in about 3 hours.
Any questions on this policy?
Just one quick question, since we're modifying it, should we, now that we're past the classes of 22, 23, and 24, should we take out that section of this policy? Where, because we had changed graduation requirements starting with this year's graduating class. And we passed it when that class was going into 9th grade. So for a couple years, we had 2 sets of graduation requirements. We no longer do, because the class of 2025 is now.
So you would have a recommendation that we remove the column class of 22, 23, and 24.
Yeah, because they've already graduated, so.
I think it's a good, just comparison to see the change. Like, and that's a good point of information for when we go to do it again.
Mm.
Go to do it again, because it'll happen at some point in the future, just to see how we go in circles in education when we undo what we've already done.
I would only counter that we will have a copy of the old policy available, and that it might just be confusing to have, the older dates in there, but.
I mean, in this year's handbook and in the course of study, Dr. Galligan already changed that it's just 25 and beyond. In the past years, he did have both because both sets of students were in the
Yeah.
schools, so he had already made that change in the handbook and the selection course. So since we were looking at this, just wondering if we should make that change.
Yeah, you
but-
could add that to the motion. Easy.
Are you comfortable with that?
I'm perfectly comfortable with that, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's only there for historical data now. I mean, we are functioning off this last column.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would make the motion to approve the updated file IKF, striking that language around the MCAS, and then also removing the reference to the classes of 22, 23, and 24, since they have already graduated.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
3 to 1.
Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to our final agenda item, which is under new business, the consent agenda. We have one donation.
Just a donation in the amount of, from the October rebate, the amount of $899.10 from Bay State Textiles.
Move to approve or accept.
Seconded.
Seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
So 4 to 0. Wonderful. Okay, that brings us to that point in the night, the school committee addenda. Teresa, do you have anything this evening?
You know, I intended to, and I forgot to bring it. I wanted to recognize the students who won the Tonys, but maybe, Mr. Luff, if you could recognize them at the next meeting, just like share who those students were.
I sure can.
Thank you so much.
Kate?
I don't have anything. Thanks.
David?
Nothing.
I also do not have anything this evening, except I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving and rested up and is ready to make that push towards the holiday break at the end of Christmas. At the end of Christmas. At the end of December. Christmas, the holiday break at the end of December. That's what I said. I am certainly looking forward to it. I need some time off. I know, I really do. The time change is really messing with me right now. All right, so that is it for this evening. First I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Second it. All those in favor? Aye. 4 to 0. We do not need to go into executive session this evening, so that is it for us. We will be back again on Wednesday, December 18th at 7 p.m. back here in this room. And we look forward to it. And thank you so much for joining us this evening.